We see in Lent, we always are able to see probably most clearly of the seasons, the direct connections of the readings. And today we see this setup of the first Adam versus the second Adam. And Paul's letter to the Romans spells it all out for us, right? That the obedience of Jesus, this moment of his temptation in the desert kind of being the, ultimate manifestation of those temptations, are overcome to undo what the disobedience of the first Adam in the garden we heard about in the first reading has brought to humanity and to the world. Disorder, fallenness, and brokenness, and sin, and death. So we celebrate that in our Christian faith. But the challenge we continue to have is, how do we understand and who do we understand that Savior to be? And I was reading in preparation for this weekend more of Jesus of Nazareth, Pope Benedict's kind of three-part series that he does on the Gospels. And it's really great stuff. And I have to say, I haven't been so kind of drawn in and felt kind of enlightened by reading in quite a while than the 18 pages he writes on the temptations in the desert. I encourage you to try to find those and check them out. But, and there's things in the first temptation kind of addressing that question. He kind of turns the question of, how do we fall into tempting Jesus in kind of these different ways that we want him to be the Messiah. And the first temptation, that question that maybe you've heard or maybe you've questioned it before. How can this Messiah who Jesus claims to be, how can God be who he is? And we have the issue of world hunger. So he addresses that there. I'm not going to get into the details. I want to get to the third one. But the second one, temptation, he talks about how we tend to test God as if he's an object of kind of scientific, experimentation. And by doing that, we automatically negate him being God, because you can't, test the God of the universe and make him an object in that way. But we can fall into that, either consciously or subconsciously. But the third temptation, he gets into this idea of, who ultimately, this is some of the ways he says it. And because I love the way he writes it, I'm going to read to you a little bit. So I hope that's okay. But he says the fundamental question of the third temptation concerns the question as to what sort of action is expected of a Savior of the world. And he moves forward and at some point says, this appears to be the question that we can fall into. What did Jesus bring then if he didn't come to usher in a better world? Because we don't see him necessarily making that happen. When he came 2,000 years ago, we still struggle that the church has not helped bring about, and the Christian faith has not helped bring about a golden age of humanity, in a sense. Why hasn't that happened? So he says, what did Jesus bring then if he didn't usher in a better world? And he goes on, and again, good stuff in between. But so he says, what did Jesus actually bring if not world peace, universal prosperity, and a better world? What did he bring? And his answer is very simple. He says, he brought God. And maybe that feels like an oversimplification, but let me explain. He has brought God. He's brought God who formerly unveiled his countenance gradually, first to Abraham, then to Moses and the prophets, and then in the wisdom literature, the God who revealed his face only in Israel, even though he was also honored among the pagans in various shadowy guises. It is this God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the true God, whom he has brought to the nations of the earth. He goes on, he has brought God, and now we know his face. Now we can call upon him. Now we know the path that we human beings have to take in this world. Jesus has brought God, and with God, the truth about our origin and destiny, which are faith, hope, and love. It is only because of our hardness of heart that we think this is too little. It's really a profound statement. It's only because of our hardness of heart that we think that this is too little. and we want more. We want that golden age. We want universal prosperity, which again is very fair to want. But maybe Pope Benedict suggesting we're missing something if that's all we focus on. Yes, indeed, God's power works quietly in this world, but it is the true and lasting power. Again and again, God's cause seems to be in death throes. How often do we feel like, over and over, and have we said maybe, what's going on and what we've been dealing with in the last, 5-6 years of our church and our world, and it seems like, why does it never seem to be moving in that golden age prosperity direction? Almost as if God's on a ventilator, right? Yet over and over again, it proves to be the thing that truly endures and saves. The earthly kingdoms that Satan was able to put before the Lord at that time have all passed away. Their glory has proven to be a mere semblance. But the glory of Christ, the humble, self-sacrificing glory of his love, has not passed away, nor will it ever do so. So a chance for us as we try to make more room for God, one of the ways we can is making sure we have the right understanding of who God is. Sometimes one of the obstacles to allowing him more fully into our life is that we have an improper understanding or expectation of who God or the Messiah should be. So if we're falling into those temptations, or maybe those are arguments we've heard from other people and their struggles to believe in God, or to get involved because of what we see in this world, hopefully that can reinforce for us that it's his presence and his love in our lives that is what Jesus came to remind us of, and that the kingdom he has come to bring ultimately is not one that can be manifest in earthly ways. He kind of points out, Pope Benedict, that ironically the two probably closest times that humanity and the church were able to bring influence into our world, at least the Western world, the age of Christendom, which we usually talk about, kind of those high Middle Ages, the 11th through the 13th centuries, when Christianity had probably the greatest influence and was manifest culturally, politically, educationally, across the board. And then also the papal states, the time of the popes actually having a country and having political, involvement and motivations, that really those two have come and gone and did not succeed. And our goal is not to bring them back, because that could be part of the temptation of what we're just talking about. That it's no human kingdom that's ever going to establish the heavenly kingdom, the divine kingdom. And yes, we want to try to penetrate those kingdoms to bring goodness and truth, but they can't be the instrument that brings salvation. Only God can. And so we hopefully, or that we can take some time during Lent to realize that, and as we embrace that, to let God more fully be in our lives as who he is, not who we're tempted to think he should be or want him to be, and to realize it's more than enough who he is, and to let that Savior, that God, love us and sustain us forever.